In the United States, there is a saying, if you're not smart enough like a Jew to make your own money, better learn how to sue one. You guys know the story of Donald Trump. You guys know Cristiano Ronaldo. Almost every big actor, celebrity, politician, influencer, you name it, they have came out and said things about them.
This asshole, this loser, this PDF file, piece of shit, this poor excuse of a fucking man that he pretends to be, trying to teach kids to be one, right? He calls himself a king, King Azoulay, right? Which he is, but he's not the king that he wants to be. He's the king of being the biggest piece of shit that I've ever seen. After I went over his criminal case and showed everybody what him and his f***ed up brother and their f***ed up friend did to that poor 15-year-old girl, a virgin, took advantage of her, affected her entire life. After I showed everybody that, right? Instead of coming clean and admitting like a man what it is he did, he made a response video trying to twist the story in every which way he can to hide the truth again from people. But that's not gonna work with me, because I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna poke a hole through every one of his bullshit lies, just like I wanna poke a hole through his fucking head. I'm gonna show you the medical records, and I'm gonna show you the whole story so everybody knows what really happened that night. And while I was going over the documents again, over 140 pages, I found something else. And the story gets even worse, because him and his brother did this. Same thing that they did to that 15-year-old girl. They did it to other underage girls, and his Abu Sharmuta parents knew about it. And now I'm gonna show you.
And go back almost 20 years to present to you something that I didn't do.
First, we gotta take a look at his bullshit response, because he was putting up stories on Instagram and on YouTube, trailers like this is a fucking movie. I mean, we know how much he wants to be a fucking movie star, but this is not the time to bullshit around, right? So he put up all these bullshit things trying to get people to tune in to his bullshit response. So he starts off by comparing himself to Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, soccer players, other famous people, because this asshole thinks he's famous, right? So he's trying to compare of when those people got accused and it was just a money grab, right? He's trying to say it's the same shit with him.
In the United States, there is a saying, if you're not smart enough like a Jew to make your own money, better learn how to sue one. I mean, you clearly know the stories about Andrew Tate. You guys know the story of Donald Trump. You guys know Cristiano Ronaldo. Almost every big actor, celebrity, politician, influencer, you name it, they have came out and said things about them. Because it is so easy to say something about a man and then come back with a big lawsuit.
Then he starts telling the story about what he says happened that day. And of course, he changes the story completely, like the fairy tale bullshit life he's living, lying off his ass.
18 years old, throwing a birthday party at my house. A group of girls show up, and one of the girls was the girl that I like. That girl was hanging out with me the whole evening. That girl even spent the night. That is not the girl who said that she was. When we wake up in the morning, I hear cops knocking on my door, saying you're accused of. They arrest me, and they arrest my 14-year-old brother. The girl who was a friend of the girl that was hanging out with me. When she left our house and said bye to everybody, she then came back with a case, accusing that me, my brother, and another young man raped her.
So then he starts going into more details of what he's saying happened that night. He's saying him and his brother, they weren't interested in that girl. They didn't want to fuck her, right? But their friend wanted to fuck her. and he wanted to go in the house, but Ben said, no, if you want to fuck her, you fuck her, but it's got to be out here on the couch, and we're all going to watch like a bunch of assholes because we're sick fuck.
You see, she said that she was a freshman in college. She had a few drinks. We all had some drinks. Everybody was fine. Everybody was cool. Nothing like that ever happened. She then went to my brother and tried to get with him. My brother didn't want to, but at the same time, this girl was very adamant about getting somebody to hook up with her. So we're hanging in the backyard, and she sits next to one of the young men who was 17 years old and asked him, will you sleep with me? And I told him, you guys cannot go in my house. If you want, you guys could do it here. So they tried it in front of everybody. And then next thing that happened was, it didn't work for him. So a few seconds after, they stopped and they were just sitting down and hanging out with us. You know, young people having drinks, trying to test something they haven't tested before, doing things around people. Okay, things happen when you're a young adult. People do some things that they probably wouldn't do as an adult. So I don't want to say anything bad about the girl. I don't want to say anything bad about the guy, and I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. But when the girl left my house, she said bye to everyone, and the kid that did touch her took her back home. In the morning, cops show up at my house, take me in, arrest my brother, and interrogate us to see if that's truly what happened. So after they interrogated us, they released me and my brother. And after they interrogated her as well, we then start going to court.
Now that you heard his bullshit fairy tale movie story of what happened that night, right? It clearly differs from the story that is written in the actual criminal case that I showed you. A highly intoxicated H is repeatedly and forcibly AR'd by at least 3 of the defendants while the others stand by and watch. H was forcibly dragged into a bedroom by Ben, who stripped of her clothes, forced her to perform OS on him, and then oral blank on her against her will. Ben then proceeded to brutally force himself upon H, beating her and AR'd her against her will. Other boys, including Dylan and Mayer, watched while this was going on, but made no effort to stop Ben. Now this is where he's claiming it's a money grab. $50 million, he's saying, the family and this girl wanted from him, which I'm gonna stay here because I'm gonna get into that number here in a moment. But he's saying the judge looked into it, the DA looked into it, the cops on the scene looked into it. He said the doctors even looked to it, and no ever happened. It was all a bullshit lie.
But you know, right after we received the accusation, there was something else that came with it. And I'm sure you could guess what it was. It was a $50 million loss. So we weren't worried about the case, because truly you'd have to really prove that there was a, and we knew it wasn't true. We didn't do this. So we went back and forth to courts. And eventually, when the judge looked into it, and the DA looked into it, and the officers and doctors, they realized that there wasn't anybody. This was a bunch of young people who were hanging out, drinking some alcohol, and a young girl that went back home to strict parents who supposedly got so upset. They sued us for $50 million because their daughter was out.
However, the doctors, they never said no happened. In fact, if you look at the medical report, which I'm going to show you, the nurse, after the girl dialed 911 and was taken to the hospital, this is what was reported. At approximately 5:05 a.m., Richard and Judy received a phone call from H. She was crying and asked her parents to come pick her up at the corner of Dory Place in West Hills. Richard and Judy arrived to find H still intoxicated and vomiting. H had bruises on her legs and told her parents that she had been AR'd. Now, remember, this asshole Ben, when he's telling the story of what happened that night, he said they were fine after the event, and Mayor, he even dropped her off. Completely different over here. Then, Richard and Judy brought H home and called 911 immediately. Paramedics responded and H was transported to the hospital, examined by a trauma nurse who found evidence of vaginal and anal tearing, bite marks, and bruising. Now this is where this fucking asshole is living in his fucking fantasy movie again. Except it's not with Van Damme and Kickboxer with the father and the Sharmuta daughter kicking the tree. No, it's not one of those movies. It's a movie where there's a judge. He's saying the judge came up to him and said, listen, $50 million is a lot of money. Do you want to do this to your parents? We clearly see that nothing happened here. So we'll give you a simple charge. You'll go to prison for a little while, jail, he's saying 30 days. And if you accept it, there's no $50 million lawsuit against your parents.
So, the judge gave us an offer. The judge came and said to my lawyer, look, I could remove the $50 million because the lawsuit was on me. It was my parents' house. It was on the homeowner's insurance, and it was on my parents. The judge says, listen, I have a great deal and we can finish all of this. I'll tell them to remove the $50 million lawsuit because what they need is real justice. But I'll also let them know that there wasn't any, and that they're going to lose this case regardless. So how about we do that? We get me, Ben Azoulay, to plead guilty to code 288, which means relation with a minor. Imagine for my 18th birthday, that was such a horrible gift. But she said, I'll give him that. All of it will be expunged off of his record. He'll spend 30 days in jail to make it seem like it's a lot, and he'll be done with it. And I say, but they will remove the lawsuit, the $50 million lawsuit off of my parents and everybody? He says yes. But nothing happened between me and her. And that was the devastating thing for me.
But this is the thing. The criminal conviction happened in 2008. The civil case that we're looking at didn't happen until 2 years later in 2010. And criminal and civil cases are never connected to each other. It's not the same judge. It's not the same jury. It's not the same nothing. Fucking asshole is making up lies again in his fantasy story. Now notice something. When he's talking about this bullshit $50 million deal, what happened to the brother? Whatever happened to fuckface Mayor, right? What about them? He clearly doesn't mention anything that happened to them because we know his brother went to prison for raping the girl. Conveniently, he doesn't want to mention it. Now, to think this asshole as a human can't get any worse, right? He's taking this whole situation because he's adding that the judge told him that he could be this hero to his family for taking this fucking deal. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what does he think he is? A kamikaze in World War II, crashing himself into people, sacrificing his life for the good of the people? I mean, we already know how much he loved being that cream of some young guy, right? But you're never gonna be one of them, you asshole.
He says, listen, son. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. Be sure you're being the hero here. You're saving and protecting your whole family.
And then he also had the nerve to say, the girl, she never bothered showing up to court, right? Trying to make it like she's lying, that's why she didn't show up, right?
So they asked for the daughter to come and speak, and she didn't want to speak. She didn't want to come to court. She didn't want anything to do with that. So the judge realized it was all the parents. And the poor girl, due to the fact that she didn't want to come to court, her parents tossed her to boarding school, said they don't want to deal with a troubled child. because she used to like going out and she used to like dating guys. And I guess later on we found out that she was a troubled child.
But if you look here at the medical report part of it, right? The reason why she didn't show up to court is because she couldn't stand seeing your face again in person, you and your brother and fucking asshole friend, because she couldn't sleep the nights. As it is, she couldn't stand to see your fucking faces again. Now this civil case seems like it was settled out of court, like my lawyer explained, which is why it's hard for us to see the actual outcome.
We see they had a confidential settlement, which is the most likely outcome, because we then see that this dipshit attempted to sue the homeowner's insurance of the house in which the assault occurred in. So likely what happened is that they settled for an undisclosed amount, and then he attempted to sue, again, the homeowner's insurance of the home in which this assault occurred in.
But his claim of the $50 million, right, is complete bullshit. And how you know this is because the parents, after they did this settlement, they went over to their house policy and tried to claim the amount of money so they didn't have to pay out of pocket. And if you look at the house policy, it was less than $1 million. Because they went after the insurance company to make that claim, that's the reason why we can see what happened in that civil case. Because if it was settled, these files wouldn't be accessible, right? These records. But because the insurance company in turn went back and tried to take Ben and his parents to court, these files were included in that document, which is why we're able to see this all. So this asshole and his family thought none of this was ever going to be seen because they settled, right? But because the insurance company went after them, we can see all this shit. Now, this is where it gets even worse, because I was going over those 140 pages of documents again, and it's a civil case. The parents were getting sued, right? There was a passage that says this asshole, Ben, and his brother, not only did this to this 15-year-old girl, right? They did this to other underage girls and got them drunk and took advantage of them, and that the parents should have known about this and they should have never allowed what happened that night. Premises liability against defendants David Azoulay and Rachel Azoulay. This is their parents, okay, saying that they're responsible for what happened in their house. Now, this is the important part. H is informed and believes, and on this basis alleges that defendants David and Rachel Azoulay knew or should have known that defendant Ben Azoulay had been previously charged with criminal acts, knew or should have known that alcohol had been and continued to be consumed by minors on their property, including Ben and Dylan Azoulay, and knew or should have known that defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay had previously had intercourse with underage and or intoxicated girls. So this is saying that they had priors to all of this, and the parents should have known. It was foreseeable to defendants David and Rachel Azoulay that defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay would have had sexual intercourse with and performed acts of oral relation on underage girls if they continue to allow alcohol to be consumed by minors, including defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay and Mayor Vareed on their property. So it looks like this piece of shit and his brother had a history as kids of doing this shit to other girls. And it's hard to get those records because they were juveniles. And Ben, as I showed you in my last video, looks like he continued this in his life because he did it to girls as they were an adult because they shared their stories with me. He says in his video, right, that his partners now and the other girls in his life, he told them this story, right? And they were cool with it.
See, when I shared with friends, or when I shared it with ex-girlfriends, or when I shared it with my wife, the reaction was, things happen. It's life. And every single woman that I have dated, I literally made sure that she knows of this story and made sure that she lets me feel comfortable.
But I spoke to people that were in his life, girls. And you know what they told me? They said, John, he told me a version of the story, but it was never the version of the one that you told that day. So he lied to them just like he does with everything else in his life. Now, I was watching Dubs made a great response right after this happened. And he said something that triggered my mind. He said that Ben, the piece of shit, right, and his brother and the other asshole, victimized this girl and took away so much of her life when she was just 15 years old. And now, 20 years later, with his bullshit f***ed up response, he has the fucking nerve, like a monster, to do this to her again.
That's amazing. To make a video like that? Wow. Zero shame. None whatsoever. A 15-year-old girl was victimized. What is it? What is she now, 35? Around 35 years old, and you're doing it again?
So shortly after this, he posted a story bragging to everybody how famous he is. He can't go anywhere anymore in this new life. Everybody knows who he is, right? What I'm gonna say is, yeah, maybe now after all these videos we've done, you are famous, but it's not for what you wanted. Because now when you go around, people are gonna look at you and they're gonna say, that's that evil piece of shit PDF file. And let's see if you like that attention, you asshole.
You want to know the truth? The truth is that I kind of do miss my old life sometimes. I really do. I miss the peace. I miss being able to go to places with my wife and not being jumped on every second. I mean, my wife's favorite place is Magic Mountain. I can't go to Magic Mountain because I go to the mall and everybody sees me, and it gets to a point where it's like they're huddling me, they want photos, they want autographs, they want to hug me. And I love my fans, don't get me wrong. It just is very different today. Things are not the same, and they never will be, and I'll only become more and more known, and I know that.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please hit like on my video.